saw the doctor look up sadly, but only to lower his head again till his chin rested upon his chest, while Jack Penny stared and drew his knees up to his chin, embracing his legs and nodding his head sagely, as if he quite approved of what I was doing. The only individual who made any active demonstration was who jumped up and came to me wagging his tail and uttering a sharp bark or two. Then he ran off to the water, snuffed at it, lapped a little, and threw up his head again, barking and splashing in it a little as he ran in breast high, and came back, as if imitating that he was ready at any moment for a swim. The doctor looked up now, and a change seemed to have come over him, for he rose from where he had been seated and took my hand. "Quite right, my lad," he said. "One must never say despair. There is a ledge there higher up, where we will place the ammunition. Let's keep that dry if we can. It may not be touched by the water, even if we have to swim for our lives. The guns won't hurt, that is, if they're not washed away." It was as if he had prepared himself for the worst, and was now going to make strenuous efforts to save himself and his friends, after we had taken such precautions as we could about our stores. Jimmy grinned and helped readily to place the various articles likely to be damaged by water as high as we could on ledges and blocks of stone. Though I did all this, it was with a feeling that we were never likely to see the things again. Still, it was like doing one's duty, and I felt that then, of all times, was the hour for that. So we worked on, with many a furtive glance at the water, which kept on encroaching till it began to lap the feet of our black companions. But they did not stir. They remained with their positions unaltered, and still the water advanced, till the highest point of the ledge was covered, and Jip began whining and paddling about, asking us, as it were, with his intelligent eyes, whether we did not mean to start. "Hi, Jip, Jip!" shouted Jimmy just then. "Up along, boy, up along!" And he patted the top of one of the stones that we had used for a breastwork. The dog leaped up directly, placing himself 3 feet above the flood, and stood barking loudly. "Yes, we can stand up there for a while," said the doctor, "and that will prolong the struggle a bit. Here, come up higher," he cried, making signs to our black companions, who after a time came unwillingly from their lower position, splashing mournfully through the water, but evidently unwilling even then to disobey their white leader. They grouped themselves with us close up to the breastwork, where we stood with the water rising still higher, and then all at once I felt we must swim, for a fresh wave, the result probably of some portion of the flood that had been dammed up higher on the river course, swept right up to our lips. But for the strength of our stone breastwork, we must have been borne away. As it was, we were standing by it, some on either side, and all clinging together. We withstood the heavy wrench that the water seemed to give, and held on, the only one who lost his footing being Jack Penny, who was dragged back by the doctor as the wave passed on. "Enough to pull your arms out of the socket," whined Jack dolefully. "I say, please don't do it again." Higher and higher came the water, icily cold and numbing. The wave that passed was succeeded by another, but that only reached our waists, and when it had gone by, there was the old slow rising of the flood as before till it was as high as our knees. Then, by degrees, it crept on and on till I was standing with it reaching my hips. A fearful silence now ensued, and the thought came upon me that when the final struggle was at hand, we should be so clasped together that swimming would be impossible, and we must all be drowned. And now, once more, with the water rising steadily, the old stunned, helpless feeling began to creep over me, and I began to think of home in a dull, heavy manner, of the happy days when I had hardly a care, and perhaps a few regrets were mixed in with it all. But somehow I did not feel as if I repented of coming, save when I thought that my mother would have two sorrows now when she came to know of her loss. Then everything seemed to be numbed. My limbs began to feel helpless, and my thoughts moved sluggishly, and in a half-dreamy fashion I stood there pressed against the rock, holding tightly by the doctor on one side, by Jimmy on the other, and in another minute I knew that the rising water would be at my lips. I remember giving a curious gasp, as if my breath was going, and in imagination I recalled my sensations when, during a bathing expedition, I went down twice before Jimmy swam to my help and held me up. The water had not touched my lips. It was only at my chest, but I fancied I felt bubbling in my nostrils and strangling me. I seemed to hear it thundering in my ears. There was the old pain at the back of my neck, and I struggled to get my hands free to beat the water like a drowning dog, but they were held tightly by my companions. How tightly, probably, they never knew. Then I remembered that my head suddenly seemed to grow clear, and I was repeating to myself the words of familiar old prayer when my eyes fell upon the surface of the water, felt as if I could not breathe. The next minute Jip was barking furiously as he stood upon his hind legs, resting his paws upon his master's shoulders, and Jimmy gave a loud shout. "All the water run away just fast now!" And as he spoke, it fell a couple of inches, a couple more, so swiftly indeed that the terrible pressure that held us tightly against the stones was taken off pound by pound, and before we could realize the truth, the water was at my knees. 10 minutes later, it was at my feet, and before half an hour had passed, we were standing in glorious sunshine with the rock ledge drying fast, while the river, minute by minute, was going down, so that we felt sure, if no storm came to renew the flood, it would be at its old level in a couple of hours. We were dripping and numbed by the icy water, but in that fierce sunshine it was wonderful how soon our wrung-out garments dried, and warmth was rapidly restored to our limbs by rocks that soon grew heated in the torrid rays. "Big Bunyip got no more water. All gone this time," said Jimmy calmly. "Poor black fellows tink go die. No die, Jimmy. Lots of do find 'em fader all over big country. Water all gone. Jimmy cunning, artful. Not mean and die this time. Bunyip not got enough water. Give Jimmy something eat. Ready eat half sheep and damper. Give Jimmy some eat." We all wanted something to eat, and eagerly we set to work, but soaking damper was not very sumptuous repast. Still we feasted as eagerly as if it had been the most delicious food, and all the time the water kept going down. End of chapter 23.